When I was in the process of leaving douchebag, I gave myself permission to pursue other relationships. I had a vague suspicion that Mr. Bag would be trying to keep me on a string, but I underestimated his tenacity. I struck up a friendship with a coworker at the coffee machine, and it quickly evolved into a romantic interest. He was nice, he was funny, and we had a lot in common. One of the things we had in common was that he had been married to a douchebag as well, and she had discarded him a few years before. So here were two extremely damaged people with two extreme douchebags still in their orbit. It doesn't take a psychic to see how that went, but that's for a future video. When I finally got into my own place, I immediately stepped up my relationship with CW, acronym for coworker. I would spend my time with him when girl twin and boy twin were with their dad, DB. The same week I moved into my apartment, DB's girlfriend moved into his house. DB's relationship failed rather quickly within a couple of months. He thought he was just going to whistle and I'd come running back, but he would learn that he was mistaken. I told him that I had already moved on. That was my second mistake. The first mistake I made was getting involved with anyone in my damaged state, and I could have changed it, but I really liked CW. So many things resulted from this tactical error. The first was that Mr. Bag instantly took this as an insult to his pride, a pride that had no basis. My getting together with a coworker was a personal embarrassment to him. In DB's mind, now it was all about the other guy. The fact that DB was a shithead was completely ignored, no matter how many times I brought it to his attention. DB still felt like he owned me, and he felt that his territory was being violated. He took it as a personal challenge to get me away from CW. Dealing with DB's jealousy was like being back in high school. DB told everyone whose opinions I cared about that I was committing adultery. He personally visited my mother, my father, and my sister to tell them what I was doing. He set me up to pick up the twins from my former church, where I would be corrected about the error of my ways. I had no problem telling them where they could stuff it. I spent a lot of time explaining myself to people as to how I was living my life, and there were lasting repercussions. I have some lingering bitterness at the people who initially took his side, even for a moment. Relationships were forever changed. DB found CW's phone number and made harassing phone calls. DB would call me at my home and at work, angry that he wasn't getting his way. When I started screening my calls, he started sending harassing letters. Back then, if you wanted to write someone, you had to do it through snail mail. It was through these letters that I learned what an absolute nutcase the DB was. He would open every letter with, "Dear Mrs. Bag," or "To my wife," or "To the mother of my children." One day he would write how much he loved and missed me, and the next letter would be absolutely insulting. Some of the letters were just plain insane, and of course he signed every one of them. Eventually I started throwing them in a box, unread. By the way, the cool thing about handwritten letters is that they are evidence in court. DB coached the kids to say disrespectful things to CW and damaged a potential amazing relationship. CW did try, but DB would make sure it didn't happen. Having had a mother who I suspect had borderline personality disorder, I do get how this can happen. DB's neighbor told me that he was coaching the kids to call us losers. CW was working in his yard one day and noticed footprints in the flower bed in front of a window. I have no doubt that these were DB's. CW started noticing unfamiliar people in cars sitting adjacent to his house. So unintentionally, I dragged an innocent individual into my crazy. While CW handled it amazingly, things may have been better for both of us if I had waited for DB to move on before getting into a serious relationship. It was bad for the kids, too. Looking back, I realized that I, too, was toxic from being with a crazy maker for so long. Every part of my personality had been damaged, and it would be a long road to recovery. I had no boundaries, I had no self-esteem, I was angry, I was scared, and I had a ton of narcissistic traits to overcome. I had no idea who I was or what I wanted to do with my life. My kids needed extra care at this point, and I was distracted. I have to admit that I did start to question whether I wanted a relationship after I'd been on my own for a few months. But I had learned that CW was an amazing, rare individual, and I didn't want to lose him while he was waiting for me to get my life together. It was a bit selfish of me, I know. I was lucky that CW was a good person. My people judgment skills were bad, so I easily could have ended up with a douchebag just as bad, or even worse than DB, and put my kids in danger. They were already in a bad place. I think one of the worst things that can happen to a person is to find their ideal partner when still involved with a toxic one. It creates additional stress, it inflames the douchebag, endangers an innocent bystander, complicates the children's already screwed up lives, and complicates the divorce and child custody. I give this experience 0 stars, do not recommend. DB continued to harass me even after the divorce. He finally gave up his pursuit when I promoted coworker to husband, although he would still cause drama in my household for years to come. I often wonder how it would have been if I had waited to get involved in another relationship. Do you think that DB would have been as aggressive? Do you think that he might have moved on sooner? Or do you think that his aggressiveness would have increased because he thought there were no obstacles? I am looking forward to reading your opinions, and thanks for watching.